The Awakening. The year was 2073. Humanity, once a simple species on a small blue planet, had awakened to a reality that none had ever expected. Earth had always been overlooked by the vast, unknown galaxies, a mere speck among countless stars. But things were about to change. Something had begun to stir deep within humanity, something far greater than anyone could have imagined. On the outskirts of the galaxy, an alien race, the Zorathians, had always considered themselves the strongest, the most feared predators in the universe. No one had dared challenge their dominance until now. Something had happened on Earth. A spark, a sudden change that had caught the attention of every alien race across the cosmos. It started with whispers, mysterious signals from deep space, intercepted by alien factions and analysts alike. Strange signals were coming from Earth, not the typical scientific frequencies they had tracked in the past, but something new, something intelligent. The transmission was unlike anything any species had ever sent before, a message that spoke of strength, survival, and power. These were the words humanity had unknowingly sent across the stars, and they were enough to stir the galaxy's most powerful beings. In a dark, cold room aboard the Zorathian flagship, Commander Thras leaned forward as the transmission played again. His dark eyes narrowed, the ancient symbols of his people glowing faintly on his skin. "How is this possible?" he muttered, as the words echoed through his mind. Humans, fragile creatures, were speaking of power. He was not the only one disturbed. Across the galaxy, the Varkari, a race of towering warriors, felt the ground shake beneath them. The once thriving empire of the Gorthan Collective was silent, as their fleets gathered in secret, preparing for what was coming. Every race that once ruled the stars began to question their place. Were they truly the predators they had once believed themselves to be? Or was the galaxy about to witness the rise of something more terrifying? On Earth, the change wasn't just a matter of alien interest. Within the halls of governments and military command centers, whispers began to spread there too. The signals had been received, and the message was clear. Humanity was not alone. Not only that, but humanity had to prepare itself, for war was coming. Captain Elena Carter stood in front of the massive holographic map of Earth's orbit, tracing her fingers over the glowing lines that marked the boundaries of their influence. She had served in the military for most of her life, but what was happening now, what she was seeing, was unlike anything she had ever been trained for. The unknown alien ships, the strange signals. Everything was happening faster than anyone could react. "Have you found anything?" Carter asked, her voice steady, but filled with concern as she turned toward the group of scientists and analysts gathered in the room. Dr. Aaron Keyes, a leading expert in alien communication, looked up from the data streams that had been running nonstop for hours. "We've found something, Captain," he said quietly. "The transmission. It's not just random noise. It's a call of sorts. A challenge." "A challenge," Elena repeated, furrowing her brow. "From who?" "From them," Dr. Keyes said, his fingers hovering over a symbol on his console. The holographic map shifted, zooming in on a distant galaxy where the signal originated, a place known as the Varkari star system. "I believe humanity is being watched. And they're waiting for us to make a move." Elena's mind raced. She knew that humanity had been making strides in technology, pushing the boundaries of space exploration and warfare. But the idea that an entire galaxy could be aware of them, and now expect them to react in some way, it was almost too much to comprehend. As the days passed, the situation grew more intense. News reports flooded the media. Military operations went into overdrive. Governments convened emergency meetings. The entire planet was on edge. And yet, despite all the preparation, no one truly knew what to expect. It wasn't until the first alien ships arrived that the true scope of the situation became clear. It was a quiet morning when the first scout ship appeared in Earth's atmosphere. The massive alien craft, shaped like a jagged diamond, hovered silently above the oceans, its sleek metallic surface glinting in the sun. From the ground, it looked almost beautiful, a stunning, otherworldly craft that could only belong to an advanced civilization. But the fear was immediate. Military forces scrambled into action, scrambling jets, mobilizing defenses, and preparing for the worst. What came next, however, was even more unexpected. The ship didn't fire on Earth. Instead, it simply observed. Its sensors and drones scanned every inch of Earth's surface, taking in information at a level never before seen. It was as if the aliens were studying humanity, not as enemies, but as something else entirely. In the command center, Elena watched in disbelief as the alien ship made no hostile moves. "What are they doing?" she asked, confused. "They're watching us," Dr. Kais replied. "They're studying us, our strengths, our weaknesses. But more than that, they're waiting for us to act. And act, humanity would. Not out of desperation, but because they had no other choice. If they were to survive in this new reality, they would have to fight, adapt, and ultimately rise as the predators they had never been before. The very thing the galaxy feared most was about to come from Earth, and it would change everything. As the alien ship lingered above the Earth, the world held its breath, waiting for the inevitable next step. Would humanity rise to the challenge, or would they fall to the overwhelming power of the galaxy's deadliest predators? The stage was set. The awakening had begun. The question now was, how far would humanity go to claim their place among the stars? The discovery of human potential. The galaxy had always been a place where power was measured in strength, technology, and conquest. Alien races like the Valkyrie and the Zorathians had ruled for centuries, their might unmatched by any species that dared challenge them. But as the weeks passed, humanity's role in this cosmic theater began to change. Something incredible was happening. While alien forces debated how to handle this new human presence, the humans themselves were unaware of the immense potential they held within. They had always thought of themselves as vulnerable, fragile creatures in a vast and dangerous universe. But beneath their seemingly insignificant exterior, humans possessed something far more powerful than anyone could have predicted. An unmatched ability to adapt, evolve, and survive in any circumstance. Dr. Aaron Kais was one of the few humans who had begun to understand this shift. A leading expert in extraterrestrial biology, he had spent his life studying alien species and their unique capabilities. However, after the mysterious alien transmissions and the subsequent arrival of the first alien scout ship, he had begun to realize something much more dangerous was brewing inside humanity. "Have you looked at the latest data from the alien ship?" Elena asked, her voice filled with urgency. Dr. Kais looked up from his console, his brow furrowed in thought. "Yes, I have," he said. "And I think I've discovered something extraordinary." He turned the screen toward Elena, showing a series of complex data streams. They were from the first alien encounter, the ship that had hovered silently over Earth. The data was incomprehensible at first glance, but Kais had spent countless hours analyzing it. "What am I looking at?" Elena asked, staring at the strange graphs and symbols. "This," Kais began, pointing to a particular section of the data. "This shows a pattern, something that is unique to human biology. We've always thought of ourselves as weak, defenseless against the more powerful species in the galaxy. But this is a signal of adaptation." Elena narrowed her eyes. "Adaptation?" "Yes," Kais replied, his voice filled with awe. "Humans have a unique genetic trait. It's a kind of evolutionary resilience. We have the ability to adapt to new environments, new threats, faster than any known species in the galaxy. It's not just a biological trait, it's ingrained in our very nature." The implications of this discovery were staggering. While the alien races had always relied on their superior technology and physical strength to maintain their dominance, humanity had something far more dangerous: the ability to learn, to evolve, and to become a force that could not be predicted. The more Kais analyzed the data, the more he realized that humanity's true strength lay in their unpredictable nature. As Elena processed the information, she could not help but feel a surge of hope. The aliens had underestimated humans. They saw them as weak, but they were wrong. This unique ability to adapt would make them far more dangerous than any alien force had imagined. But the discovery didn't stop there. Case's further analysis revealed something even more alarming. The Zorathians, the Valkyrie, and other alien races had long known about the existence of humans, but they had never considered them a threat. They had dismissed Earth as a backwater planet in an insignificant part of the galaxy. But now, after witnessing the early signs of human resilience, the aliens were beginning to understand the true potential of humanity. Meanwhile, on Earth, the news began to spread. The government, military, and global leaders began to understand that they were no longer just playing a part in their own small corner of the galaxy. The very nature of humanity was about to change. No longer would they be helpless. No longer would they be the prey. Humanity had to prepare to face the galaxy's deadliest predators on equal terms. Commander Thras of the Zorathians was among the first to take notice. He had spent his life studying the tactics and strengths of every known species in the galaxy. And now, as he reviewed the reports from his scouts and spies, he couldn't ignore the unsettling truth. Humans were not like any species they had ever encountered. They were more than their physical limitations. They were unpredictable, and that made them far more dangerous than any force he had ever faced. The Zorathians, known for their ruthlessness and military superiority, were a proud and powerful race, but they had never encountered an enemy that fought with such ingenuity and tenacity. Commander Thras realized that if they did not act quickly, humanity could soon become a major threat to his people's power. The Zorathian fleets began to prepare for an invasion of Earth, but they were not just concerned with the humans' technology. They feared the unexpected. Humanity's strength was in its ability to adapt. At the same time, the Valkyrie were discussing the potential consequences of allowing humanity to grow unchecked. They had been the self-proclaimed rulers of the galaxy for centuries, and they had never thought to consider humans a true rival. But the more they observed, the more they realized how wrong they had been. Humanity's rise was not based on sheer power or advanced weaponry. It was based on something deeper: the will to survive, the will to fight back, no matter the odds. On Earth, as leaders and military commanders worked to develop new strategies to prepare for the inevitable alien invasion, a small group of elite soldiers, scientists, and thinkers began to form a plan that would harness humanity's unique strength to its fullest potential. They would use their adaptability, their creativity, and their determination to survive. And they would not stop until they had secured a place at the top of the galactic food chain. But the universe had already started to notice. The galaxy's deadliest predators were beginning to tremble in fear. As the first signs of invasion began, humans were ready, not just with weapons and defenses, but with a mindset that would change the course of history. It was time for humanity to prove that, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant they were, they could rise above their weaknesses and become the galaxy's most fearsome predators. And so, the stage was set for a battle unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. The awakening was over. Humanity had discovered its true potential. And now, the predators were coming. The first confrontation. The air was thick with tension as humanity's first true test in the galaxy's vast, uncharted territories began. The peaceful days of Earth, where humans had only to worry about their daily struggles, were long gone. Now, they stood at the precipice of war, facing the very real possibility of extinction. The aliens had come to Earth, and they were not here for diplomacy. They were here to conquer, to wipe out the humans before they could become a threat. But they did not yet understand the true nature of the species they were about to face. It all began with the appearance of the Valkyrie fleet. They were a race of towering, fierce warriors known across the galaxy for their brutal efficiency in battle. Their ships were large, heavily armed, and designed for one purpose: total destruction. They had no interest in negotiations or peace talks. They had come to Earth with one mission: to eliminate humanity before it could rise as a threat to their reign. The first Valkyrie ship appeared in Earth's orbit, a massive, dark shape against the backdrop of space. It was a ship unlike anything humans had ever seen. The size alone was enough to send shivers down the spines of any military commander. And yet, the humans were not intimidated. They knew they had to fight, no matter the odds. The time for fear was over. Captain Elena Carter stood on the bridge of the human flagship, watching the Valkyrie ship on her screen. Her hands were steady, but her mind was racing. She had faced the unknown before, but this was different. This wasn't a simple skirmish. This was a battle for survival. "Captain, the Valkyrie ship is preparing to fire," reported Lieutenant Harper, her voice calm but tense. Elena nodded. "Prepare our defenses. Get all ships into position." The next few minutes felt like hours. Every human ship, every soldier, every fighter pilot was getting into position, preparing for a confrontation with the Valkyrie. The fate of humanity rested on their shoulders. The first blast came from the Valkyrie ship, a massive energy pulse that tore through space toward Earth. The human ships immediately returned fire, their weapons shaking the very atmosphere of space. The battle had begun. The Valkyrie fleet was powerful, no doubt. Their ships were equipped with advanced weaponry capable of destroying entire fleets with a single strike. But what they hadn't accounted for was humanity's adaptability. While the Valkyrie ships fired with precision and force, the humans reacted quickly, dodging, weaving, and using every ounce of creativity to outmaneuver the oncoming blasts. In the chaos of battle, one ship stood out. It was a smaller human vessel, seemingly insignificant compared to the massive Valkyrie warships. But aboard that ship was a team of engineers who had created something new. Something the Valkyrie hadn't seen before: an experimental energy shield. When the Valkyrie launched another barrage of missiles, the human ship activated its shield, and for the first time, the alien weapons bounced off harmlessly. The Valkyrie commanders were stunned. "Captain, our shield is holding," the ship's commander reported, his voice full of surprise. Elena could hardly believe it. This was the first sign that humanity had something the Valkyrie didn't expect: the ability to think on their feet, to create solutions in the heat of battle. The humans had just bought themselves some time. But that wasn't enough. The Valkyrie were relentless, and they soon adapted to the humans' tactics. A larger wave of ships arrived, surrounding Earth's defenders. The odds were growing slimmer with every passing second. "Hold the line," Elena shouted into her comms. "We're not backing down." But just as it seemed the tide was turning against them, something unexpected happened. A signal cut through the chaos, a message from an unknown source. The voice on the other end was human, but the words were strange, almost cryptic. "Elena, it's me. We've figured it out. The Valkyrie can't predict us. We have to keep them guessing. Use our last weapon." Elena's heart skipped a beat. That weapon, the one she had heard of in whispers but never seen, was humanity's secret weapon. It was a weapon that used the power of human ingenuity in a way that no other species had ever considered. And now, it was time to unleash it. "We're ready," Elena said, her voice steady with resolve. "Activate the prototype. All ships, follow my lead." The human fleet, now in the thick of battle, suddenly shifted tactics. They began to move unpredictably, breaking from traditional military formations and scattering in every direction. The Valkyrie fleet, known for its strict, disciplined tactics, couldn't keep up. Every time they tried to predict the humans' movements, the humans changed their course. It was as if they were dancing around the Valkyrie ships, always one step ahead. For the first time in the battle, the Valkyrie commanders began to panic. They couldn't predict their enemies. The humans were not fighting by any known rules. They were chaotic, unpredictable, and most terrifying of all, they were winning. In the midst of this, the final move was made. The prototype weapon, A form of advanced electromagnetic disruption was activated. It sent out a pulse of energy that scrambled the Valkyrie's targeting systems and shut down their shields. The human fleet launched a final, decisive assault, tearing through the disoriented Valkyrie ships with precision. The Valkyrie fleet, once so powerful and invincible, was now in disarray. And for the first time, they were forced to retreat. As Elena watched the Valkyrie ships warp out of Earth's orbit, a wave of relief washed over her. They had done it. Against all odds, humanity had won the first battle. The Valkyrie, who had once seen themselves as the rulers of the galaxy, had been forced to retreat by the very species they had underestimated. But this was just the beginning. The victory came at a cost. Humanity had shown that they could fight, but they had also shown their vulnerability. The Valkyrie would return, and when they did, they would bring a far greater force. Elena knew this wasn't the end. It was only the start of something much bigger. Humanity had proven its worth, but the war for survival had only just begun. The counterattack. The battle over Earth had ended in a surprising victory for humanity. The Valkyrie fleet, once the epitome of galactic power, had been forced to retreat, their ships damaged, and their commanders left scrambling to understand what had just happened. The humans, with their unpredictable tactics, had proven themselves not just capable of surviving, but of thriving in the face of a galactic predator. But in the deep void of space, there was no time to rest. The Valkyrie would return, stronger, smarter, and more prepared. On Earth, the celebration was short-lived. Military command centers buzzed with activity as world leaders and commanders knew that the respite was only temporary. Captain Elena Carter paced through the command room of the human flagship, her mind racing with calculations and possibilities. Despite the victory, she felt an eerie calm settling in. She knew the Valkyrie would be back. And this time, they wouldn't underestimate humanity. They would come with overwhelming force. "What's the status of the fleet?" Elena asked, her voice cold and precise. "Sir, we're at full alert," Lieutenant Harper reported. "Our ships are in position, but the Valkyrie are still on the move. Their forces are regrouping in the Tylos Nebula, just outside the Valkyrie home system." Elena nodded. She wasn't surprised. The Valkyrie would regroup, and they would come back with more firepower, more tactics, and better strategy. But humanity's victory had not gone unnoticed by the rest of the galaxy. The news had spread like wildfire. What was once a small, insignificant species had just proven they could stand against the most feared predators in the galaxy. Back on Earth, however, there were more immediate concerns. The government and the global leadership had begun to strategize their next steps. The war had only just begun, and there was still much to prepare for. But there was a new sense of unity among the nations, something that had never existed before. The threat from beyond the stars had forced humanity to come together in a way that was unimaginable just a few months ago. Now they had no choice but to stand as one. Elena sat at her desk, reviewing the intelligence reports. She knew that Earth's military could not rely solely on their current tactics to fight back. The Valkyrie had seen how humans could adapt, and they would surely prepare for that unpredictability. Humanity needed something more, a final weapon, something that would give them the edge they desperately needed. "We can't keep relying on these hit-and-run tactics," Elena muttered to herself. "We need a decisive strike." Dr. Aaron Keyes, the scientist who had uncovered humanity's unique adaptive abilities, had been working tirelessly in the background, trying to find a solution. He had been analyzing alien technologies and their weaknesses. Keyes had already begun to experiment with new methods of warfare, but it was clear to him that a single attack would not be enough. The Valkyrie were learning, evolving just as humanity had. "We need to take the fight to them," Elena said, turning to Dr. Keyes. "We can't wait for them to come to Earth again. We have to hit them first." Dr. Keyes nodded solemnly. "We've made some progress with the new energy weapons, but they're still not ready for a large-scale attack. What we do have, though, is an advantage." "What advantage?" Elena asked, leaning in. "We know the Valkyrie," Kais replied, his voice low. We know their strengths, and more importantly, we know their weaknesses. If we can infiltrate their home system, we can strike at the heart of their empire. We can hit them where it hurts. Alina's eyes narrowed as she thought about it. The idea of taking the war to the Valkyrie was bold, risky, but necessary. They couldn't just wait to be attacked again. Humanity had to show the galaxy that they were no longer prey. They were predators, and predators struck first. The plan was set in motion. A covert team of humanity's most elite soldiers and scientists would infiltrate the Valkyrie homeworld, located within the heart of their empire, and sabotage their most critical defenses. The mission was dangerous. One wrong move, and they could face total annihilation. But the success of the mission would shift the balance of power in the galaxy forever. As Alina and Dr. Kais prepared to lead the operation, the human fleet made its final preparations. This was no longer a battle for survival. It was a battle for dominance. Humanity had been given a taste of victory, and now they were determined to prove they could do more than defend. They could conquer. The day of the mission arrived. In the deep silence of space, the human ships launched, their engines roaring as they tore through the darkness. A small fleet, hidden among asteroids and debris, set course for the Valkyrie homeworld. They moved swiftly and silently, relying on their small size and stealth capabilities to avoid detection. Commander Thras of the Valkyrie fleet, now fully aware of humanity's unpredictable tactics, kept a watchful eye on the situation. His pride had been shattered in the first battle, and he was determined to restore his people's dominance. The Valkyrie were known for their sheer brutality, but this time, Thras had something more. His fleet had been redesigned and re-equipped to handle the human threat. As the human fleet neared the Valkyrie homeworld, a sense of unease settled over them. They had entered enemy territory, and one wrong move could lead to disaster. Alina's heart pounded in her chest, but she kept her focus sharp. This was humanity's moment to show that they would not be pushed around. They would not be dominated. Suddenly, alarms blared. The Valkyrie had detected their fleet. They found us, Lieutenant Harper shouted, gripping the controls tightly. Alina's voice was calm but firm. Prepare to engage. We fight our way through. The battle began with a fury. The human ships were outnumbered, but they were swift and cunning. They danced through the Valkyrie defenses, dodging blasts and returning fire with precision. The Valkyrie, surprised by the humans' resilience, struggled to keep up. Target the primary energy cores, Alina commanded. Take out their power source. As the human fleet pressed forward, they reached the heart of the Valkyrie homeworld's defense network. There, they launched their final assault, a direct hit to the Valkyrie's most vulnerable point, their power grid. Explosions rippled through the Valkyrie defenses, sending shockwaves through their command center. Commander Thras watched in disbelief as his fleet began to falter. The human ships, once seen as weak, were now striking with deadly precision, and it was happening on his home turf. His own people were starting to panic, realizing that their domination over the galaxy might be ending sooner than they had ever anticipated. The human counterattack had begun, and it was unstoppable. Humanity had shown the galaxy that they were no longer the prey. They were the hunters, and the galaxy would soon learn that there was no turning back. The turning tide. The battle for the Valkyrie homeworld had just begun, and the humans had already made a significant dent in the heart of the Valkyrie Empire. The energy cores they had taken out, along with the successful sabotage of key military infrastructure, had disrupted the Valkyrie command. But the fight was far from over. In the chaotic aftermath of their initial victory, Alina Carter's fleet found themselves in a deadly race against time. The Valkyrie were not going down without a fight. Their survival instincts were in full force, and Commander Thras was not about to let humanity's audacious attack go unpunished. Captain, we're losing communication with the outer fleet, Lieutenant Harper reported, her voice tense with urgency. Alina didn't need to be told twice. She immediately snapped into action. The Valkyrie, despite their technological setbacks, were still a formidable enemy. The humans had caused them significant damage, but now they were being cornered. It wasn't just about holding their ground anymore. Humanity needed to stay on the offensive. "We need to push forward," Alina ordered. "No retreat. We've taken the fight to their doorstep. Now we finish it." But even in victory, Alina knew this was only the beginning. There was no guarantee that this would be the end of the war. Other alien species would see what had happened, and they would be watching closely. But for now, humanity had sent a message to the galaxy. They were not to be underestimated. And the Valkyrie would never forget the day they came face to face with humanity's might. As Alina watched the destruction of the Valkyrie fleet, she allowed herself a rare moment of relief. But she knew that the real battle was just beginning. The war for the future of the galaxy had been ignited, and humanity had made their mark as one of its most formidable predators. The turning tide. The battle for the Valkyrie homeworld had just begun, and the humans had already made a significant dent in the heart of the Valkyrie Empire. The energy cores they had taken out, along with the successful sabotage of key military infrastructure, had disrupted the Valkyrie command. But the fight was far from over. In the chaotic aftermath of their initial victory, Alina Carter's fleet found themselves in a deadly race against time. The Valkyrie were not going down without a fight. Their survival instincts were in full force, and Commander Thras was not about to let humanity's audacious attack go unpunished. "Captain, we're losing communication with the outer fleet," Lieutenant Harper reported, her voice tense with urgency. Alina didn't need to be told twice. She immediately snapped into action. The Valkyrie, despite their technological setbacks, were still a formidable enemy. The humans had caused them significant damage, but now they were being cornered. It wasn't just about holding their ground anymore. Humanity needed to stay on the offensive. "We need to push forward," Alina ordered. "No retreat. We've taken the fight to their doorstep. Now we finish it." Humanity's fleet had struck a powerful blow, but now it was a matter of surviving long enough to ensure they could fully execute their plan. If the Valkyrie countered quickly, it could all unravel. The human ships, though lighter and less powerful than the Valkyrie's massive warships, were maneuverable and swift. They darted through the chaos, engaging in hit-and-run tactics, picking off Valkyrie vessels one by one. Alina watched her ship's sensors closely, knowing the enemy's retaliation would come hard and fast. The atmosphere in the command room was tense, but Alina had been through enough battles to know the importance of keeping calm. The lives of every soldier, every pilot, and every citizen of Earth rested on the success of this mission. Suddenly, a deep tremor rocked the ship, followed by a series of alerts. The Valkyrie had adapted faster than the humans anticipated. They had launched their full force, and it was closing in on the human fleet. "We've got multiple Valkyrie warships on our tail," reported Commander Sykes, who was stationed on a nearby ship. Alina's heart skipped a beat. This was the moment when everything could fall apart. The Valkyrie were relentless, and if they had recalibrated their strategy in response to the humans' unorthodox tactics, the consequences could be catastrophic. But then came a surprise. A faint, almost imperceptible signal buzzed through the communication channels, a signal from Earth. "Captain," Lieutenant Harper said, eyes wide with disbelief. "We've received a transmission from Earth. It's from Dr. Case. He says they've completed the prototype weapon." Alina's pulse quickened. This was humanity's last card, their ultimate weapon. It was still untested, and its success wasn't guaranteed. But if it worked, it could turn the tide of the entire war. "Send the coordinates. We're launching a full assault," Alina ordered. "This is it. This is what we've been fighting for." The human fleet, despite their disadvantage, now had something the Valkyrie could never predict. It wasn't just a weapon. It was humanity's ingenuity, the same adaptability that had saved them before. If the weapon was deployed correctly, it would take out the core of the Valkyrie's military strength. The battle intensified. The Valkyrie were furious, but now they were reacting to humanity's moves with a sense of urgency. Each blast fired from their ships felt like it could be the last, But the humans continued to dodge and weave through the chaos, their ships becoming almost invisible within the barrage of weapon fire. And then, as if on cue, Dr. Key's message came through. "Captain, the weapon is ready for deployment." Dr. Key's voice echoed through the comms. "Target the Valkyrie flagship. We're sending the coordinates now." Elena didn't hesitate. She knew that hitting the Valkyrie flagship would cripple their forces. If they could destroy the command center of the Valkyrie fleet, it could cause them to collapse from the inside. "Prepare for the final strike," Elena commanded. "All ships, follow me. It's time to end this." The human fleet accelerated towards the Valkyrie flagship, breaking away from their scattered formations and coming together for one final, concentrated push. The Valkyrie were caught off guard, and they scrambled to realign their defenses, but it was too late. "Target locked. Firing now," Lieutenant Harper called out. The energy pulse erupted from the human ship, a devastating beam of concentrated power that tore through space like a comet of destruction. The Valkyrie flagship took the full brunt of the attack, and in a split second, its shields were down. The explosion was catastrophic. The flagship, once the pride of the Valkyrie fleet, crumbled into nothing more than a pile of debris. For a moment, silence reigned over the battlefield. The Valkyrie fleet was in disarray. Without their flagship to lead them, their forces quickly began to falter. The humans, driven by the momentum of their victory, didn't stop. They pressed forward, striking every ship in their path, each explosion a testament to their newfound strength. The Valkyrie, who had once thought of themselves as the supreme predators of the galaxy, now found themselves on the edge of defeat. Their pride had been shattered, and their forces were crumbling. Humanity, once thought of as weak and insignificant, had shown the galaxy that they were capable of much more. The Valkyrie had underestimated the resilience, the creativity, and the fierce determination of the human race. But even in victory, Elena knew this was only the beginning. There was no guarantee that this would be the end of the war. Other alien species would see what had happened, and they would be watching closely. But for now, humanity had sent a message to the galaxy. They were not to be underestimated. And the Valkyrie would never forget the day they came face to face with humanity's might. As Elena watched the destruction of the Valkyrie fleet, she allowed herself a rare moment of relief. But she knew that the real battle was just beginning. The war for the future of the galaxy had been ignited, and humanity had made their mark as one of its most formidable predators. The price of victory. As the smoke cleared from the battlefield, and the remnants of the Valkyrie fleet drifted aimlessly in space, a new chapter in galactic history began to unfold. The humans had dealt a devastating blow to the Valkyrie, but the cost of victory was becoming apparent. While the Valkyrie flagship lay in ruins, its destruction had not been without consequence. Humanity's fleet, though victorious, had been severely damaged. Their ships limped back toward Earth, battered but triumphant. Elena Carter stood on the bridge of the flagship, her gaze fixed on the viewscreen, watching as the vast emptiness of space swallowed up the shattered remnants of the Valkyrie forces. The quiet that followed the chaos of battle felt almost unnatural, like the calm before another storm. "Captain, the fleet is reporting damage to several ships," Lieutenant Harper said, breaking the silence. "Most of the ships can still operate, but the repairs will take weeks, if not months." Elena's mind was racing. The Valkyrie had been defeated, yes, but this was no time to rest. Their fleet had struck first, and their sudden surge of power had caught the enemy off guard. But Elena knew the Valkyrie were far from finished. They were relentless, and they had resources that humanity could not yet comprehend. "We've won the battle," Elena said, turning to face her crew. "But the war is far from over. The Valkyrie will regroup, and will need to be ready for the next strike." Dr. Aaron Keyes, who had been working tirelessly on the advanced energy weapon that had turned the tide, stepped forward. His face was drawn, eyes tired from the long days of research and testing. The weapon had worked, But Kayes knew that it had pushed their technology to its limits. He had no illusions about the future. "Captain, we've achieved something incredible, but we've also pushed our technology to the brink," Dr. Kayes said, his voice tinged with caution. "The weapon worked, but it's not something we can deploy recklessly. The energy signatures we used are unstable, and we'll need to find a way to stabilize them before we can use it again." Elena nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. The weapon had been their trump card, but if they couldn't replicate it quickly, they would be vulnerable. The Valkyrie had learned from their defeat, and they would not make the same mistakes twice. Humanity would need to be ready for whatever came next. On Earth, the global leadership had already begun to strategize their next steps. The war was not just a military battle. It was a race for resources, a fight for survival on a galactic scale. Nations that had once been divided now stood united, but unity alone would not win the war. Humanity needed new technologies, new weapons, and new strategies if they hoped to keep the upper hand. In the midst of all this, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that the victory over the Valkyrie had changed something fundamental. It had shown the galaxy that humans were not to be underestimated, but it had also exposed their vulnerabilities. Humanity had won this battle, but the war was far from decided. They were in uncharted territory, and the next phase of the conflict would require everything they had, and more. "Commander Sykes, what's the status of the Valkyrie homeworld?" Elena asked, her eyes narrowing. Sykes, who had been monitoring the Valkyrie's retreat, looked grim. "Their homeworld is in chaos, Captain. We've disabled their fleet for now, but their colonies are still intact. We've also intercepted signals indicating that they're calling for reinforcements. The Valkyrie are rallying." Elena clenched her fists. The battle might have been won, but the war was not over. The Valkyrie were a fierce, determined species. They would not give up easily. And now, with their back against the wall, they would likely become more dangerous than ever before. "We need to strike while they're weak," Elena said, her voice steady, but filled with urgency. "We've crippled their fleet, but their strength lies in their numbers. We can't afford to wait for them to regroup." Dr. Kayes stepped forward again. "I'm not sure if we can deploy the weapon that quickly, Captain. We'll need time to stabilize the energy cores and recalibrate the targeting system." Elena nodded in agreement. She had been hoping for a quick resolution, but now it was clear that humanity would need to rely on more than just their one weapon. They had to act strategically and quickly before the Valkyrie could regroup. "All right," Elena said, making a decision. "We'll send a reconnaissance team to the Valkyrie homeworld. We need to know where their remaining forces are and what kind of reinforcements they can bring in. We can't afford to be caught off guard again." The plan was set into motion. A small strike force, equipped with stealth technology and advanced reconnaissance tools, was deployed to the Valkyrie homeworld. They would gather intelligence and return with critical data on the enemy's remaining strength. As the human ships slowly made their way back to Earth, Elena sat alone in her quarters, staring out at the stars. The victory had been sweet, but it had come with a heavy price. So many lives had been lost in the fight, and the toll on humanity's fleet was staggering. She had seen firsthand what the Valkyrie were capable of, and she knew that they wouldn't stop until they had finished what they started. And yet, despite the challenges ahead, Elena felt a spark of hope. Humanity had proven something fundamental, that they could fight and win. They were no longer just survivors in the galaxy. They were a force to be reckoned with. This victory, however hard-won, was just the beginning of a new era for the human race. But as the war against the Valkyrie loomed larger than ever, Elena understood that it would take more than courage and ingenuity to win. It would take unity, resilience, and sacrifice, and humanity would have to be prepared for whatever came next. The countdown to the next phase of the war had already begun. The final confrontation. The human fleet, bruised but unbroken, had made it back to Earth's orbit. Elena Carter stood in the command center, overseeing the fleet's repair and rearming efforts. The Valkyrie might have been dealt a heavy blow, But they were not finished yet. The battle for the galaxy wasn't over, and Elena knew that every moment counted. Her mind raced as she stared out at the vastness of space. The quiet that had settled over the fleet was deceptive. The Valkyrie, regrouping and calling in reinforcements, were still out there. And while humanity had shown their strength, the true test of survival was yet to come. This would be the final confrontation, the decisive clash that could determine the fate of the galaxy. "Captain," Lieutenant Harper said, her voice filled with urgency, "we've intercepted a transmission from the Valkyrie. They're organizing a massive counteroffensive. They've rebuilt their forces, and they're coming for Earth." Elena's blood ran cold. The Valkyrie were not a species to be underestimated. What had been a limited conflict, a tactical battle for dominance, was now escalating into something much more dire. Earth was the last bastion of humanity's resistance. If the Valkyrie succeeded in breaching its defenses, it would spell the end for the human race. Elena turned to her officers. "Prepare the fleet. We're not waiting for them to get here. We're taking the fight to them. And this time, we end it." The stakes had never been higher. The Valkyrie's reinforcements were massive, an armada large enough to overwhelm humanity's fleet. But Elena had learned to never back down from a fight, no matter how impossible it seemed. They had proven their mettle on the battlefield before. Now they would prove it once more. "Dr. Keyes, are the stabilization protocols for the weapon ready?" Elena asked. Dr. Keyes, still looking worn but resolute, nodded. "We've managed to stabilize the energy cores. The weapon is ready for deployment, but it will take everything we have. One shot, and we risk draining the entire fleet's power." Elena's gaze hardened. She had no choice. The Valkyrie had to be crushed before they could reach Earth. "Then we use it," she said, her voice unwavering. "Target the Valkyrie's lead fleet. We make this strike count." The final battle was upon them. As the human fleet advanced toward the Valkyrie forces, Elena's mind was clouded with uncertainty. She had seen what the Valkyrie were capable of, and she knew they wouldn't make the same mistake twice. But the weapon, this incredible invention, was humanity's last hope. If they missed, if the weapon failed to destroy the enemy in one decisive blow, the humans would be overwhelmed. There was no turning back. "Fleet is in position, Captain," Commander Sykes reported. "We're ready to fire." Elena nodded. The weight of the moment settled heavily on her shoulders. She had led them this far, but the final victory was not guaranteed. They would need all their cunning, all their strength, and all their willpower to win this. "Fire," Elena ordered. The weapon unleashed a burst of raw power, a beam of pure energy that shot through the vastness of space. It was an unstoppable force, and it streaked through the heavens, targeting the heart of the Valkyrie fleet. The Valkyrie attempted to regroup, their defensive shields flaring to life, but it was too late. The weapon's blast cut through their defenses like paper. The explosion that followed was colossal. The Valkyrie flagship, the heart of their fleet, shattered into a million pieces. The shockwave reverberated through space, taking out countless Valkyrie ships in its wake. For a moment, there was nothing but the haunting silence of a battlefield, still caught in the echoes of destruction. But the Valkyrie were not done yet. "Captain," Lieutenant Harper cried out. "They're retreating, but they're not giving up. They're preparing for a final charge." Elena's pulse quickened. The Valkyrie weren't just fighting for their survival. They were desperate. They had nothing left to lose, and that made them far more dangerous. The remaining Valkyrie ships, led by their commander, rallied together in a final stand. They were badly outnumbered, but their fury was boundless. They charged toward the human fleet with all the force they had left. Elena knew that the weapon's power had nearly drained the human fleet's reserves. The remaining ships were in no condition to sustain a prolonged fight. They had one final chance to finish this. "Get the fleet into position for a close-range assault," Elena commanded. "We'll finish this with brute force." The human ships, still agile despite their damage, closed in on the remaining Valkyrie forces. It was a desperate, up-close battle now. Lasers and missiles flew in all directions as the two forces collided, their ships locked in a deadly dance of destruction. But Alina's fleet had something the Valkyrie didn't: unity. The humans fought with the sheer will to survive, their determination unwavering in the face of certain death. They had learned, over the course of the war, that strength was not just about firepower. It was about adaptability, resilience, and unity. Slowly but surely, the human fleet began to gain the upper hand. The Valkyrie, despite their best efforts, were being driven back. The final charge had turned into a last, desperate scramble to escape, but it was too late. One by one, the remaining Valkyrie ships fell. As the last of the Valkyrie forces disintegrated into nothingness, Alina stood on the bridge, staring at the empty void that had once been the heart of the Valkyrie invasion. There were no cheers, no celebrations, just a quiet acknowledgement that the war had finally come to an end. Humanity had won. But at what cost? Alina turned to her crew, her eyes tired but resolute. The war had been brutal. So many had sacrificed so much. But Earth was still standing. Humanity had proven that they could rise from the ashes and defeat the most terrifying predators the galaxy had ever seen. For now, they had won. But Alina knew that the galaxy was vast, and there would always be new challenges ahead. Humanity had ascended to become one of the deadliest forces in the galaxy, but this was just the beginning. The universe was full of unknowns, and one thing was certain: humanity would face those challenges head-on. The battle for the galaxy was over. The war for the future of humanity, however, was just beginning.